Welcome back to Empowered. I'm Elizabeth Namofsky. Today we're tackling overcoming shame to live your best life. I'm joined by Marcia Bergen, founder of Marcia Bergen Group, a real broker, and author of the book, Powerhouse, Strategies for Female Realtors to Outperform the Industry. Marcia, just before we went to break, and we were talking about putting ourselves first and everything else. Sometimes there are critics, though. How do you identify who the critics are? And I believe that you said that, they aren't always who you think that they are.
This is so true. I think that the first thing that we need to recognize is it's not sometimes that there are critics. There are always going to be critics. Yeah. So the critics are always there. They were always there. Whether you were doing good things or bad things, or you were doing nothing at all, there are people who are uncomfortable in their own stories or in a certain place in their life that are watching, but they're not only watching you, they're watching everybody else because they feel empty or they feel broken or they're just in turmoil in a transition place in their life that doesn't feel good for them. So I think the first thing to really understand is that the critics are always there. And there are sometimes the people who tell you that your outfit looks amazing, even though you know deep down it looks terrible on you. They're the people who, cheerlead you, but, follow that with a derogatory comment just to keep you a little bit humble and, not feeling super good about yourself. And I think that the more that we work on ourselves and we become comfortable with ourselves and we accept who we are, it becomes, number one, easier to identify the critics. But number two, I think when you recognize that the critics are there, that they were already there, and you save space for them. In fact, sometimes I say to people, give them a front row seat because they're there anyway. And when you leave that space for them, you have more freedom and space for yourself and for your cheerleaders.
So what makes us want to win over our haters? Because that's a lot of energy.
You know what? It's the funniest thing. And I read a lot of Brene Brown, and she writes about that because we spend so much time trying to win over the haters that we're not actually telling our story because we're not authentically ourselves when we're acting out in a way, trying to attract people who aren't going to accept you. They're not going to love you. And it's not even about you. It's about them. So they can't, because in order to do that, it would really, bruise their ego or false ego, really. And so I think that, we all naturally want to win over the haters, but the reality is we're not winning them over anyway. Yeah. And we recognize that we can save space for the people who truly do show up for us, that show up for us when we do terrible things or we don't act in a way that we're necessarily proud of, but, they dust us off. They love us, not because of our mistakes, but in spite of them. And they cheerlead you and support you. And in that space is where the people are waiting. They're waiting for you to show up. They're waiting for you to tell their story, your story, so that they can find connection with you, that they can find healing with you. And I think, again, as women, it's really hard for us to just do that so easily because we're, flooded with supermodels, with, images of the perfect life, whatever that is.
There's no
on
such
social
thing.
media. Right. And so it gets really, really hard for us not to win over the haters.
So we have less than a minute left. I can't believe that these 4 segments have just flown by. We've been sitting and just, catching up with each other. What are the 3 key components to showing up as yourself? Just quickly.
The 3 key components for yourself is, first of all, to recognize where you came from and to be okay with that, to understand that everyone came from somewhere. The second thing is to save space for yourself because it's really, really hard not to. And the third thing, I think, is to ask yourself constantly, if you never showed up for yourself, really, would you have regret at the end of your life? And I think that if we're all honest with ourselves, the answer would be yes.
I love that, Marcia. Thank you so much for coming on Empowered. Marcia's closing words of wisdom are, don't let someone dim your light. You were meant to shine. Regardless of where you've come from, and you have the ability to step into your life and shine. I'm Elizabeth Namofsky, and I'm here to empower you and make frugality fashionable. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.